Hey everybody, Connor here today at etrailer.com. Today we're going to be going over and showing you how to install the Roadmaster rear anti-sway bar here for our 2009 Workhorse W Series chassis. So this is what our anti-sway bar is going to look like installed. As you can see here, we have a connection to the bottom of the tie plate for our axle U-bolts, and we have a connection here at the top to our frame. So in regards to upgrade you can make to your motorhome, the rear anti-sway bar is going to be the most beneficial. It's going to be the most felt upgrade. So if you are planning to make some upgrades, I definitely recommend starting with the rear anti-sway bar. Essentially, what this is going to do is, when we're out driving on the highway, we get passed by a semi that creates a large gust of wind that hits the side of our RV, and it causes us to rock back and forth. Now this rocking back and forth is actually known as body roll. And our rear anti-sway bar is going to reduce that felt body roll because it's a connection between our axle and the frame. It's going to tighten up and stiffen that connection, so we're not going to have as much rocking back and forth. You may also experience these body roll symptoms when we're making evasive maneuvers, if we have to swerve out of the way. Overall, it's going to help us feel much more in control of our motorhome and to give us more confidence when we're out on the road. So we talked about the rear anti-sway bar being one of the first upgrades you'd want to consider for your motorhome. However, we do have some other things as well, such as a steering stabilizer, a front anti-sway bar, and sumo springs if you're interested. So if those sound like a good fit for you, be sure to go ahead and check out our selection. So in regards to installation, it's nothing that's too difficult per se, but it is going to take you a little bit of time. We will actually have to drill a few holes into the frame on either side, but aside from that, we don't really need any other major modifications. So now that we've gone over some of the benefits and features, let's go ahead and jump right into that installation so we can show you how it's done. So to start our installation today, we're going to come back to the rear axle of our motorhome here. We're going to look directly inside. We're going to see the two U-bolts, one on each side. We have the nuts securing the U-bolts to the axle. We want to go ahead and spray down all of our nuts now because we're going to be removing them. We're just going to be using some penetrating oil here. And the longer you let it set, ideally, the easier they'll be to break free. So now we'll take our 15/16 inch socket. We'll go ahead and remove the nuts to our U-bolt. And now with both of our nuts free, we can go ahead and remove our U-bolt. So now we'll take our new U-bolt in our kit here, which is going to be much longer than the factory U-bolt. We'll go ahead and place that into position. So now we're going to take our supplied washers and our supplied U-bolt nuts. We're going to go ahead and tighten and torque these two nuts here before we remove the other side. So now we're going to take our 1 1/16 inch socket. We're just going to snug our two nuts up for now. Keep in mind, when we're tightening U-bolts, we need to work our way back and forth to each one. Now we'll switch back to our 15/16 inch socket, and we'll remove our other two nuts for our other U-bolt. We're going to be replacing this with a longer one as well. So now we'll come back and take our 1 1/16 inch socket, and we'll torque down our 4 nuts to our U-bolt here to the factory specifications. Once that's done, we'll repeat this process on the other side. So now we're going to take our plate here. We can go ahead and install it over our U-bolts we just installed. Now as you can see here, the plate sort of comes to a point. We have 2 small holes up here. These need to be facing the front of the RV and towards the center, just like this. Once we have our plate into position, we'll go ahead and take our flat washers and U-bolt nuts to secure it. And once we get this side done, we'll simply repeat the same process on the other side. Now we're just going to go ahead and snug up all of our nuts before we torque them down. Now we can go ahead and torque down our hardware. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get our actual anti-sway bar out. We're going to lay it down underneath the RV, roughly aligning where our brackets are so we know where to install the saddle bushings, because that's actually going to be the next step. We're going to take the grease that comes with our kit here. We're going to line the insides of these bushings here. We're going to need to do this for both sides. Once we get that nice and lubed up, we're actually going to go ahead and install these onto our anti-sway bar. So now that we have the rough location that we install these saddle bushings onto the anti-sway bar, we'll go ahead and do that now. Once we have those on, we're going to go ahead and take our bracket here and install that as well. We'll repeat that process on the other side. Then we can take our 7/16 inch hardware here, and we can go ahead and set it up into position using the 2 holes on our bracket here. We're going to need an extra set of hands for this. So now we'll take our bolt with our washer, we'll feed it up through the 2 holes here once we get everything aligned. We can secure it on the other side with a flat washer and our nut. We'll repeat that process on the other side of our saddle bracket as well as on the other side of the vehicle. We'll go ahead and snug down all our hardware, then we can torque it to spec. Now we can go ahead and torque down all our saddle brackets to the specifications in our instructions. So now we'll take our shackle here, and we'll attach it to our anti-sway bar with our 5/8 inch bolt. We'll secure it with our lock nut. So now we're going to take our frame bracket here. We're actually going to go ahead and attach it to the shackle. It doesn't matter which hole we use for this first process here. We're just going to be using the bottom one. We will, however, need to pay attention to which hole we're using in a further step. But once we do this, we're going to take our sway bar here and we're going to rotate it up towards the frame. So once we have our sway bar up, we can go ahead and mock up our frame bracket here. So we want our shackle here to be as vertical as possible. We don't want it tilted one way or another. But once we get it vertical, we can go ahead and clamp our frame bracket to the frame rail. So here you can see we just have a clamp holding our frame bracket to our frame. The main thing we need to make sure of right now is that our link is level, or it's in a vertical most position. It's not tilted one way or another. Now that we have our bracket set into position, we'll go ahead and take our drill bits here and drill out the holes. So we can see our 2 holes here that we need to drill out, one here and one here. We're actually going to start with our 1/2 inch bit, just in order to get a pilot, get us in the center of the hole. Once we have an indentation made, we're actually going to come back with a smaller bit. It doesn't matter what size. We do want it to be around 1/4 inch or so. We'll go ahead and drill that hole all the way through, then we can enlarge it to our final size of 1/2 inch. So now that we have our hole drilled, we'll take our 1/2 inch hardware here with a 1/2 inch flat washer. Go ahead and place that through. We can secure it on the other side with a flat washer and lock nut. And we'll just repeat this process for our other hole here as well. And push it through and follow it up on the other side with another flat washer and lock nut. So now we're going to go ahead and tighten down our shackle bolts using our 15/16 inch socket. We're going to snug them up first here with our impact, then we'll come back with a torque wrench. Then we can torque everything down. Now we can go ahead and repeat that process on the other side. Now we're going to take a 3/4 inch socket and wrench. We're going to go ahead and torque these 2 bolts down. Once we're done, we'll repeat this process on the other side. And that'll do it today for our look and installation of the Roadmaster rear anti-sway bar here for our 2009 Workhorse W Series chassis.